Ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you something that changed my entire life. Success don't chase nobody who ain't leading themselves first. Success is attracted to discipline, to responsibility, to self-leadership. See, everybody wants to shine, everybody wants the applause, everybody wants that big moment, but very few want to do the part where you look in the mirror and say, I'm responsible for where I'm going. When you start leading yourself, when you start taking ownership of your actions, your decisions, your habits, that's when success starts walking toward you. Success follows self-leadership, not wishful thinking. And when you break that idea down, it becomes one of the most powerful truths you can live by. Most people wake up wanting life to change, wanting their circumstances to shift, wanting something big to happen, but wanting is not leading. Wishing is not directing your life. Hoping is not the same as taking the wheel. Self-leadership means you stop waiting for permission and start taking action, even when the path isn't clear, even when you don't feel ready, even when you don't have everything figured out. It means understanding that your progress is your responsibility. The world doesn't owe you success. Life doesn't bring opportunities to people who sit around imagining a better future. Life responds to those who take the first step and show they're willing to guide themselves through the journey. When you start leading yourself, something shifts inside you. You stop living in reaction to your environment and start creating the environment you want to live in. You stop waiting for perfect timing because you realize perfect timing is just an excuse to avoid discomfort. You stop blaming the world, the people around you, or your past because you recognize that nothing changes until you change. Self-leadership is not about having all the answers. It's about having the courage to start moving without them. It's waking up and deciding, even if I don't know where this road ends, I'm still going to walk it. That decision alone separates dreamers from achievers. A person who leads themselves begins to understand the power of discipline. Not discipline as punishment, but discipline as freedom. When you discipline yourself to wake up early, to stay consistent, to put in effort even when you're tired, you create a foundation success can stand on. Habits become stronger than emotions. Commitment becomes stronger than comfort. And when your actions follow your goals instead of your moods, you become unstoppable. Self-leadership teaches you that you don't need to feel motivated every day. Motivation is temporary. Leadership is a lifestyle. When you make choices based on you want to become rather than how you feel right now, you start becoming that person a little more each day. Self-leadership also requires honesty. You have to look in the mirror and admit the truth about your habits, your excuses, your distractions, and your patterns. You cannot lead a version of self you refuse to confront. Leadership means accountability. It means owning the parts of your life you've neglected and deciding to improve them. It means telling yourself, no more shortcuts, no more waiting, no more depending on luck. When you build that level of honesty within yourself, confidence starts to grow. Not the fake confidence that comes from pretending, but the real kind, the kind that comes from doing the work when no one is watching. As you continue leading yourself, you begin attracting opportunities naturally. People notice your discipline, your consistency, your direction. Life notices too. Doors open not because you beg for them, but because you became the kind of person who fits through them. Success follows those who show they can guide themselves, because if you can lead you can lead your goals, your plans, your dreams, and eventually others. Self-leadership creates momentum, and momentum is what carries you from small steps to big breakthroughs. When you lead yourself first, success is not a chase. It becomes a response. It becomes life's way of saying, you're ready, and you earn that readiness through daily commitment, personal accountability, and the willingness to move even when it's hard. That is why success follows self-leadership, and never wishful thinking. Discipline and daily decisions shape your future more than motivation ever will, because discipline is the force that carries you forward when your feelings try to hold you back. Motivation is useful, yes. It can spark a moment of excitement, a burst of energy, or a temporary push. But the truth is, motivation fades. It appears when life feels inspiring and disappears when life becomes difficult. Discipline, on the other hand, does not depend on mood, weather, convenience, or comfort. It is the quiet, steady choice to show up even when you don't feel like it. And it is these daily choices, these small, consistent actions that build a future you can be proud of. Discipline is the bridge between your goals and your reality, and every day you either strengthen that bridge or weaken it based on the decisions you make. Every morning, you're given two options: to follow your feelings or to follow your plan. Most people follow their feelings. They wake up tired, so they skip the work. They feel discouraged, so they avoid trying. They feel overwhelmed, so they delay what matters. But people who understand discipline wake up with the understanding that their future depends on what they choose today. They don't wait for inspiration. They don't wait for perfect conditions. They don't rely on external pressure. They rely on themselves. They know that discipline creates results long before motivation even shows up. And each time they push themselves to take action, even in small ways, they build self-respect, confidence, and momentum. Daily decisions are powerful because they seem small but accumulate like compound interest. Saying yes to your goals one day won't change your life, but saying yes every day will. Choosing discipline in tiny moments, turning off distractions, sticking to your routine, keeping your promises to yourself, creates transformation that others won't understand until they see your results. Success is not one huge leap. It is 1,000 small steps taken consistently. People often admire the final outcome, but rarely acknowledge the daily discipline that built it. Real winners understand that the journey is built on consistency, not intensity. You don't have to do everything at once. You just have to do something every day. Discipline also builds emotional strength. When you practice discipline, you learn to manage your impulses instead of letting your impulses manage you. You train your mind to stay focused on long-term rewards instead of giving into short-term temptations. You develop the ability to stay calm under pressure, to keep moving when everything feels heavy, and to stay committed even when the world around you is distracting. This inner strength becomes one of your greatest advantages because it protects your goals from your own doubts. Discipline gives you control, and control gives you confidence. Another truth is that discipline builds trust in yourself. Every time you make a promise to yourself and keep it, you teach your mind that you are reliable. You prove that you can count on yourself. Most people break promises to themselves so often that they no longer believe in their own abilities. They say they will start tomorrow, but tomorrow never comes. They say they will change, but change never happens. Discipline breaks that cycle. Discipline rewrites your personal identity. It transforms you from someone who tries into someone who commits. And when you commit, your future begins to shift. Ultimately, your future is shaped not by random luck or sudden bursts of motivation, but by the disciplined choices you make consistently. Every decision either brings you closer to your goals or pushes you further away. Every day is an opportunity to build the life you want, and discipline is the tool that makes it possible. When you choose discipline over comfort, when you choose effort over excuses, when you choose consistency over chaos, you create a future where success becomes inevitable. You must take responsibility for your direction before expecting results. Because nothing in life changes until you decide to take ownership of where you're headed. Too many people want success without accountability. They want progress without responsibility. They want the reward without the discipline of steering their own life. But life doesn't work that way. You cannot expect results from a path you're not actively walking. You cannot expect growth from habits you're not willing to change. Taking responsibility means accepting that your choices, your actions, your mindset, and your consistency are the true drivers of your future. The moment you acknowledge that where you are is a result of what you've done or not done, that's the moment you gain power to reshape everything. Responsibility is not about blame, it's about control. When you blame your circumstances, your past, other people, or luck, you give away your power. You make yourself a passenger in your own life. But when you take responsibility, you become the driver. You claim authority over your decisions. You recognize that even if life hands you challenges, you still decide how to respond. Taking responsibility means you are no longer waiting for things to magically fall into place. You are building the foundation yourself. It means you stop hoping for a better direction and start choosing one. It means you stop waiting for someone to approve your dream and start working toward it simply because you believe in it. When you accept responsibility, clarity begins to form. You start to understand what you need to change, what habits you must break, what behaviors you must improve, and what patterns you must let go of. You can't fix what you don't acknowledge, and you can't grow from what you refuse to face. People avoid responsibility because it feels uncomfortable to admit they've contributed to their own setbacks. But growth lives in discomfort. Progress is born from honesty. When you look at your life and say, "This is on me and I'm going to change it," you ignite a fire that can move mountains. Results do not come from excuses. They come from ownership. Taking responsibility also means setting direction with purpose. You don't just drift through life hoping to stumble into success. You choose your direction, your standards, your routines, and your priorities. You become intentional about how you spend your time and energy. You stop living in reaction to everything happening around you, and you start initiating action. People who take responsibility don't wait for motivation. They create structure. They don't rely on luck, they rely on effort. They don't let distractions control them. They decide what truly matters and commit to it. Responsibility builds reliability, not just for others, but for yourself. When you consistently hold yourself accountable, you build trust in your own abilities. You stop doubting whether you can achieve something because you have proof through your own actions. You start believing in your direction because you've taken the time to carve the path. You start expecting results because you've done the work necessary to produce them. Responsibility removes guesswork and replaces it with intention. People who take responsibility move differently. They don't complain about where because they're too busy working toward where they're going. They don't get stuck in fear because they understand that every step forward, no matter how small, is progress. They don't compare themselves to others because they know their journey is in their hands. Responsibility gives you freedom, freedom to grow, to improve, to evolve, and to choose a better path at any moment. And once you fully embrace responsibility, results begin to follow naturally. Not instantly, but inevitably. Your decisions start aligning with your goals. Your actions begin producing momentum. Your habits shape your future. You no longer wait for life to change. You change your life. That is the real power of taking responsibility. It transforms you into the creator of your own direction. And once you lead your path with intention, the results you've been waiting for finally start to show. Self-leadership creates clarity, confidence, and opportunity because when you take charge of your own life, you begin to see the world differently. Most people walk through life confused, overwhelmed, and unsure of what they truly want, not because they lack potential, but because they lack direction. When you start leading yourself, making decisions with purpose, choosing actions that align with your goals, and setting standards for your life, You remove a huge amount of uncertainty. Clarity comes from knowing who you are, what you're aiming for, and what steps you're willing to take to get there. Instead of drifting, you start navigating. Instead of reacting to life, you begin designing it. This clarity becomes the foundation on which everything else is built. When you lead yourself, you eliminate mental noise. You stop second-guessing every move. You stop seeking constant approval. You stop letting other people decide what you should be doing with your life. Self-leadership helps you understand your priorities, your strengths, and your weaknesses. It forces you to be honest about what is holding you back and what deserves your focus. That honesty gives you precision. It shapes your choices. It leads you to the right environments, the right habits, and the right direction. With clarity, you don't waste energy on things that drain you. You invest energy into things that grow you. And that shift alone can change everything. Clarity naturally leads to confidence. When you know where you're going, you feel stronger moving toward it. Confidence is not magic. It is built through action. Every time you lead yourself, by making a disciplined choice, by following through on a promise, by pushing through discomfort, you prove something to yourself. You show your mind that you are capable, consistent, and dependable. And each time you show up for yourself, the voice of doubt gets quieter. Confidence is not the absence of fear. It's the belief that you can move forward despite fear. Self-leadership strengthens that belief because you're no longer waiting for someone else to validate your abilities. You validate yourself through your actions. With strong self-leadership, you stop living as if you're unqualified. You stop shrinking yourself. You stop avoiding challenges. You begin taking risks, not because you're fearless, but because you trust the version of yourself who's leading the journey. You know you can adapt. You know you can learn. You know you can handle setbacks. That kind of confidence creates a powerful shift in how you show up in the world. People sense it. Opportunities sense it. Life itself responds to it. Confidence is attractive, not in a superficial way, but in an energetic way. When you believe in yourself, you carry yourself differently, speak differently, make decisions differently. And that difference opens doors. Opportunities follow centership because people who lead themselves don't wait for chance. They create conditions for chance. They show consistency. They show discipline. They show direction. And the world always notices people who move with intention. When you lead yourself first, you begin to recognize opportunities that you once ignored because you weren't mentally prepared. You see potential in places you would have overlooked. You connect with people you have never approached before. You pursue things you previously doubted you were capable of. Opportunities aren't just about luck, they're about readiness. And readiness is built through self-leadership. The truth is, people trust and invest in those who can lead themselves. Whether it's in relationships, careers, business, or personal development, self-led individuals become magnets for advancement. They take initiative. They solve problems. They show up reliably. They demonstrate focus and stability. And because of this, opportunities naturally gravitate toward them. When you lead yourself, you show the world that you're responsible, disciplined, and committed, not just in words, but in action. Ultimately, self-leadership transforms you from someone who waits for life to happen into someone who shapes life intentionally. It sharpens your mind, strengthens your spirit, and expands your possibilities. Clarity gives you direction, confidence gives you strength, and opportunity gives you momentum. And all three begin the moment you decide to lead yourself first. No one is coming to rescue you. Your growth starts with you. And the sooner you accept that truth, the faster your life begins to change. Many people spend years waiting for someone to push them, motivate them, encourage them, or guide them. They wait for the perfect mentor, the perfect timing, the perfect opportunity, or the perfect conditions. But life doesn't change because someone else steps in. Life changes the moment you decide to step up for yourself. When you finally realize that you are the only person responsible for your progress, your mindset shifts from dependence to empowerment. You stop expecting others to build your future, and you start doing the work that builds it yourself. Waiting for someone else to rescue you is one of the biggest ways people sabotage their own dreams. They tell themselves, one day someone will discover me, or someone will help me get started, or someone will show me the path. But no one understands your dreams better than you. No one feels your purpose the way you do. No one can hear the voice inside your heart except you. Growth is a personal mission. It cannot be handed to you. It cannot be done for you. You have to choose it. You have to fight for it. You have to show up even when nobody claps, nobody notices, and nobody believes in you yet. This truth might feel harsh, but there is freedom in it. Because when you stop waiting for someone to save you, you stop delaying your own potential. You stop becoming the hero of your own story. You start making decisions instead of excuses. You start finding solutions instead of complaining about problems. Taking control of your growth means you no longer depend on others to dictate your future. It means you trust yourself enough to take the first step, even when the path is unclear. It means you stop relying on external motivation and start creating internal discipline. Growth begins with accountability. You have to be honest about the areas where you've been holding yourself back, your habits, your fears, your doubts, your distractions. You cannot outgrow what you refuse to confront. When you acknowledge your shortcomings, you give yourself the power to change them. When you stop blaming the world for your circumstances, you gain the strength to reshape them. Accountability is not about guilt. It's about ownership. It's understanding that even if life has been unfair, you still have the ability to rise above it through your own actions. Growth also requires consistency. You cannot grow by working goals only when you feel inspired. You grow when you keep going on the days you want to quit. You grow when you push through resistance. You grow when you challenge yourself to improve a little every day. Consistency builds habits, and habits shape destiny. When you show up daily, you develop discipline. When you develop discipline, you develop confidence. And when you develop confidence, you become unstoppable. But all of it begins with your decision to take responsibility for your own evolution. Another part of growing yourself is understanding that setbacks and failures are part of the journey, not signs that you should give up. Nobody will rescue you from challenges. You must learn to stand back up on your own. You must learn to adapt, adjust, and move forward. That resilience becomes your strength. Every time you refuse to quit, you prove to yourself that you are capable. Every time you overcome an obstacle, you grow mentally and emotionally. Growth is not comfortable. Growth tests you. But every challenge you conquer becomes preparation for the next level you're aiming for. When you finally accept that no one is coming to save you, you unlock a level of power you never knew you had. You stop being a passenger in your own life and become the driver. You stop living by chance and start living by choice. You stop expecting help and start creating progress. Your growth starts with the choices you make daily, the discipline you build, and the belief you cultivate. And once you commit to leading your own growth, you become someone success can trust, someone opportunity can reach, and someone life begins to reward. When you consistently lead yourself, life aligns with your effort and success follows naturally because the universe responds to direction, not confusion. Most people want success, but they wait for it to show up before they start acting like the person who deserves it. They wait to feel ready, wait for motivation, wait for a sign, wait for someone to validate their dream. But success doesn't follow people who wait. Success follows people who move. When you begin to lead yourself through discipline, commitment, and intentional action, you create a powerful energy that shapes your environment, your mindset, and your future. Your effort becomes a magnet for results. Consistency is the heartbeat of self-leadership. Leading yourself is not something you do once, it's something you do daily. It's choosing progress over comfort, and purpose over distractions, and discipline over excuses again and again. And every time you make that choice, you're carving a path that leads success straight to you. Life rewards consistency because consistency builds momentum. Momentum is what turns small steps into big transformation. When you show up regularly, even in small ways, you become someone your goals can rely on. You prove to yourself that your commitment is stronger than your impulses. This inner strength becomes the fuel that propels you forward. When you lead yourself with consistency, your habits begin to change. And habits shape everything. Your mindset, your discipline, your environment, and eventually your outcomes. You start thinking differently because leading yourself requires clarity. You start acting differently because discipline demands structure. You start surrounding yourself with better influences because leadership requires intention. Over time, these changes compound. They create a version of you that is aligned with the success you're seeking. It's not luck, it's alignment. When your actions match your goals, success becomes the natural result. This alignment also impacts the way you see challenges. Instead of viewing obstacles as signs to quit, you begin to see them as part of the process. You become more patient with yourself, more resilient, and more strategic. You no longer panic when something goes wrong because you trust your ability to handle it. You've led yourself through difficulty before, and you know you can do it again. Consistency builds emotional strength, and emotional strength is one of the most powerful tools you can have. When life tests you, and it will, your self-leadership becomes your anchor. Another powerful thing happens when you consistently lead yourself. Opportunities begin to appear. Not because they suddenly show up, but because you can finally recognize them. When your mind is focused, disciplined, and aligned, you see possibilities that your old self would have missed. You notice doors that were always there but invisible to an undisciplined mind. You attract people who match your values and vision. You step into environments where growth becomes natural. Life begins to meet you at the level of your effort. Leading yourself consistently also earns you something extremely valuable: self-respect. When you keep the promises you make to yourself, you build trust in your ability to grow. You no longer question if you're capable because you've already shown yourself proof. You no longer rely on motivation because you've built discipline. You no longer wait for someone else to push you because you've learned to push yourself. This self-respect creates confidence, and confidence is the foundation of success. Eventually, with enough consistent leadership, you reach a point where the results start reflecting the effort you've been putting in for months or even years. People may call it luck, but you know it's alignment. You know it's the product of every disciplined morning, every hard decision, every sacrifice, every moment you chose to lead yourself when nobody was watching. Success follows naturally because you've become the kind of person success can trust. When you lead yourself with consistency, life begins to shift in your favor. Your direction becomes clear. Your actions become purposeful. Your mindset becomes stronger. And your future begins to unfold exactly the way your effort has prepared it to.